Let's talk about philosophy, shall we? Greetings, my name is Nina. Welcome back to my channel. So, recently I had an interesting video idea. I want to talk about philosophy in this video. I can say that I like philosophy. When I went to university, we went through the fundamental ideas of various philosophers like Nietzsche, Kant, Aristotle, Plato, and the other philosophers too. Well, later I found books by said authors. I found The State by Plato, and also Politics, Nicomachean Ethics, and Metaphysics by Aristotle, and some of the Nietzsche books, and Kant's A Criticism of Pure Reason, and an awful lot of Friedrich Nietzsche books. We had a lot of interesting discussions in uni about philosophy. Uni got me into books that I wouldn't have picked up otherwise, or I would have picked them up much later, and my perception would have been different. Philosophy books weren't the only books that I got because of my studies. I also got some other books, and I still have them. I went to two universities. In one university I got a bachelor's degree, and in the other I got a master's degree, and I had philosophy in both. I do need to confess one thing to you. I haven't finished most of the books that I have mentioned, and I have a surface level understanding of philosophy. The only two books that I went through in full were So Spoke Zarathustra and The Antichrist, both by Nietzsche. The other books by Nietzsche I have The Birth of the Tragedy of Out of the Spirit of the Music and Beyond Good and Evil, and also Will to Power. Yeah, I just remembered. Yeah, my knowledge of philosophy was never that deep. I'm an amateur, to be honest. Well, philosophy is way too difficult for me, and one of my lecturers, I remember very well, told us that we shouldn't dive deep into philosophy because otherwise we wouldn't be sure about anything. We would always be confused. After I finished uni, I decided that I have had enough of both philosophy and other books that were essential to my studies, and I switched to fantasy and other books that I liked. However, despite this, my interest in philosophy never quite fade away. To this day, I do collect philosophy books, although to a smaller extent than before. I also listen to podcasts and watch YouTube videos about philosophy. Well, I have three favorite topics for podcasts: metal, Tolkien, and philosophy. Before we dive deep into the video, let's say what's philosophy. Noun 1. The study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence, especially when considered as an academic discipline. And number 2. A theory or attitude that acts as a guiding principle for behavior. Don't expect anything and you won't be disappointed. That's my philosophy. And what's an easy explanation of philosophy? I also googled that and this is what I got. Philosophy develops the capacity to see the world from the perspective of other individuals and other cultures. It enhances one's ability to perceive the relationship among the various fields of study, and it deepens one's sense of the meaning and variety of human experience. In short, philosophy is a study of fundamental questions about ourselves and the world we live in. Philosophy does help us understand the world around ourselves better. It teaches us critical thinking, and it also teaches us to look at things from another perspective. Gonna be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I learned more from researching for this video than from uni. But uni also helped. Look, in this video I'm not going to address philosophical questions that would spark endless debates. I might look ignorant. I do not want to come off as that. Like I told you, I'm kind of an amateur when it comes to philosophy. I'm not that great. I just want to talk about reasons I go back to philosophy in various formats like books and podcasts, despite lacking deep understanding of it. Here's why. But before I dive deep into the reasons why I go back to philosophy, there's something I do need to address. When you read philosophy, you will always encounter some controversial offensive, or even outright wrong ideas, or at best ideas that you disagree with. I've learned this when I was reading Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, which is ironic because I didn't finish the book, I dumped it and gave it away because it was really boring. A boring book would alienate me faster than a controversial one. In general, I do not find Ayn Rand that interesting, but I only read, or to be exact, tried to read Atlas Shrugged. I'm not familiar with her other work. Maybe I should give it a try. Yeah, I've said it, I find Atlas Shrugged and Ayn Rand in general quite boring. Okay, that's said and done, let's dive into the reasons I go back to philosophy. Number 1, I like challenging myself sometimes. Yeah, philosophy is really challenging. Well, partially because it contains ideas you might disagree with. Philosophy is when your critical thinking and even moral values are challenged. Maybe after your philosophy, your moral values are going to go back stronger than ever, or maybe a few details are going to change, or maybe they're going to remain the same, but they might become more flexible, or you may take an entire 180-degree turn to other side. Number 2, philosophy helps you navigate society and see things from different perspectives. Philosophy does quite a good job of explaining all the strengths and flaws we have as individuals and as a society. It even helps you to understand the basics of societal structure and even various ideologies. And yes, certain ideologies and forms of government, they do have a philosophical foundation. Although it can be said that fiction can do a better job explaining these things than philosophy and various non-fiction books. But that's a topic for another discussion. Number three, because philosophy is so difficult, I like to revisit it to understand the core ideas better. You always discover something new when you revisit philosophy or books in general. You always discover something new. And number 4, it's a connection to my past. When I read philosophy books, especially Nietzsche, I think of uni. And reading Nietzsche isn't just about uni, it's also about the connection to my past self. Which is ironic given that I wasn't into Nietzsche back in the day. So originally I scripted only 4 reasons, but there is also reason number 5. I go back to philosophy where also when I am kinda confused. Maybe I do not understand something, maybe I feel worried about something, and philosophy does help. Philosophy explains you things. I just remember that there is one big misconception I made about philosophy. A lot of people think that philosophy is meant to teach you how to think and how to live. Wrong. This is absolutely wrong. Philosophy can explain to you the basics of human behavior, how society works, etc. And you read and you come to your own conclusions. And no matter what are the conclusions, you make ones of your own. Philosophy isn't meant to teach you how to live. It isn't an instruction textbook, do this and do that. Philosophy explains things and then you decide what to do with the knowledge. I've mentioned Friedrich Nietzsche, and let's talk a little bit about him. I must confess I have a bizarre relationship with his works. They're difficult, they're bombastic, and they are in your face. More often than not, I do not understand him on a deeper level. Nonetheless, I go back to his works. There's always something interesting to discover about them. Even if I disagree with him, and I do disagree with him on many occasions. Gonna be honest, Friedrich Nietzsche is the philosopher whose works I read the most. Well, he's the only philosopher whose works that I have actually completed. There's no other philosopher that caught my attention like Nietzsche did. You know what I think? Nietzsche is the rebellious and edgy teenager of philosophers. That's because of his attitude towards authority, questioning stuff, and above all, doing things his own way. Yeah, now when I think about it, Nietzsche was metal before metal existed. Metal has basically the same core philosophy, questioning authority and everything, and doing things your own way. Yes, Nietzsche was pretty metal if you look at him from such angle. One of the biggest misconceptions people have about Nietzsche is that he was a nihilist. He was not. He condemned nihilism, and he urged people to find the meaning to their lives. He thought we shouldn't wait for some force to give us a meaning. Rather, we should do it ourselves. We shouldn't rely on anything or anyone to give us purpose. We should do it ourselves. That's what he stood for. By the way, I have this core memory from when I was 15 years old. So, me and my friend, I was 15, she was 14 at the time. She asked me, Nina, what is the meaning of life? And what did I answer to her? At 15 years old, what did I tell her? I told her everybody has their own meaning of life. So last year I read The Courage to Be Disliked, and this book kinda did back up my claims. Yeah, that's truth. People should select their own meaning of life. Although, to be honest, I should have read that book much earlier because a lot of the principles that I read in the book weren't new for me. The book was late to the party, I'd say. But that's a pretty good book all the same. It's this Plato-esque dialogue between the philosopher and the youth, and they talk about philosophy and life and you name it. Well, to be honest, the title of the book was a bit misleading. I thought that the core idea of the book would be standing up to your own principles, even if they are controversial. Sure, it's partially about that, but not entirely. Fundamentally, metal and Nietzsche, they share a few values like standing up for yourself, questioning authority and morals and everything. And yeah, they were controversial at some point. Maybe there still are, but not in the way they used to. Does Nietzsche have a radical, questionable, or even outright wrong takes? Obviously, he does. There's no denying. But does he have really interesting ideas that are worth exploring over and over again? Also, yes. Okay, now I'm going to stop talking about Friedrich Nietzsche because this isn't a discussion of his core ideas. Well, there are lots of those on YouTube, to be honest. So I've mentioned Nietzsche, Kant, Aristotle, and Plato. And at university, I've heard about Locke, Spinoza, and Schopenhauer, Descartes, Rousseau, Hobbes, and others, but I haven't dived deep into them. However, there is one philosopher I wish I did discover in uni. It's so strange that we never went through her works. And I think that they're worth checking out. The philosopher is Hannah Arendt. So I read her essay, The Freedom to be Free. Barely remember anything. I need to read it again. But I do find at least some of her ideas quite interesting, so I want to get into her. And the last philosopher that deserves a mention, well, for her essays, is Simone Weil. I like her essay, The Power of Words, and I recommend checking that one out. So, and that's all. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Before I finish, I want to recommend Elizabeth Phillips' video on philosophy and how it affects our brains. So Elizabeth Phillips is a medical student in London. She makes YouTube videos related to medical studies and also some philosophical videos. She has quite interesting content. Feel free to check it out. And I'm going to finish the video right now. Thank you once again. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.